Chen. It is the first webinar of the year. I hope everyone had a fun and safe holiday season and are refreshed and ready for 2026. Today, we're going to talk about building a unified safety stack. There are tons of options out there for fleets to implement into their safety program, but how do you really get the most out of this solution? And how do you know that the safety package you have built is really fit for your fleet? Today, I have Ted with me from LifeSaver Mobile here to cover the questions submitted by you guys on building a unified safety stack that fits your fleet's safety and compliance goals. And we're really going to be, this is going to be more conversational, answering these questions, kind of diving into the conversation. And please feel free to add any questions throughout the webinar into the question box at the top of your screen. Before we jump into our discussion, I will just let everyone know that this will be recorded and provided to you via email after the webinar, as well as it'll be available on our LinkedIn and our website. So with that being said, we have some good questions to go through, so let's jump right into it. I want to really start with, there are some questions specifically about distracted driving and cell phone use, and that's kind of where Ted's, niche really is with LifeSaver Mobile. So I want to start with those. So why is distracted driving prevention now a core pillar in safety strategies?
First off, thanks, Emily, for this opportunity to be with you guys today. Really appreciate it. First week of the year, and so we're going to kick this off with a bang here. In terms of your question about distracted driving prevention, and again, I want to just kind of level set for everyone. Obviously, distracted driving can mean many things that are distracting inside the cab or the vehicle while you're driving. I'm going to use it today to be specific to, obviously, what kind of a lot of people are starting to use that term to synonymously represent, which is phone distraction or mobile device distraction, phone or tablet. So that's as Emily said, that's what we focus on, right? We focus on that technology distraction, and there's many things that are in the safety technology or in the safety strategy suite, if you will. I think we're all, everyone on the call is probably familiar with, obviously in-cab technology is huge nowadays. Continuous MVR, there's training, and there's a reward. So those are kind of in my mind, a lot of the traditional pillars in safety strategy. And what's coming to be very clear and I think very well known by the fleet ecosystem, is that in that in-cab technology piece, which obviously we all know that there's traditional telematics, the OBD telemat, the tracking stuff, and then there's the video, and they've kind of merged, right? Those two categories have merged into one big category, and a lot of the providers are now doing both. But what's really very come to bear, and everyone's kind of realizing this, is none of that stuff really truly tackles the phone distraction piece, and that is the number one cause of crashes. You can talk to any insurance provider. I'm sure you guys all have either traditional insurance or you some sort of captive, or you have or you're self-insuring. Whatever the case may be, I'm sure that whatever insurance solutions you're using, they're telling you that the phone is the number one cause of crash frequency. And oftentimes, the number one of the main reasons that an incident hits the excess layer, which is obviously, could be catastrophic, right? So at the end of the day, the phone is the number one thing to be concerned about. And I think most people nowadays are thinking, well, I got my in-cab technology, which is either traditional or video telematics, but I need to take it to the step further. And sorry to be a little long-winded here, but when you look at your data coming off of that technology platform, right, the either the OBD or the video, you're going to see, I guarantee you're going to see a high frequency of either harsh braking on the traditional telematics side, or if you're fortunate to have the driver-facing video, you'll see a lot of phone usage because of the through the video. And so that's what's causing everything to happen, and you need to take that extra step further. So that's why it is a core pillar now, is because everyone's realizing, A, it's the number one cause of crash frequency, and B, it's not going to go away with traditional in-cab technology.
Yeah, kind of, bouncing off of that, like where are fleets really struggling with the phone use enforcement today? If they have, if they have a camera system that's already supposed to be detecting that, why is this still a number one cause of crashes? Where do you see those gaps?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, obviously when someone comes to us, they're already kind of saying, yes, I still have the problem. But that's the key, is that I think, at the very core of this problem is that the phone is a unique distraction, right? I talked about distracted driving as so many different things, right? And it is, but when it comes to phone distraction, or, mobile device distraction, it is uniquely an addiction, right? It's CDC's called it that. And there's so much science behind the fact that these devices have been programmed or designed to be addictive for humans. So not just, not just fleet drivers, but all people, right? Humans are susceptible to this addiction. Most people are. I'm not saying everyone, but most people are. And so if that's the case, which again, science has said so, then that's what we're struggling with today. And so the only way to really combat that is to take, in my opinion, or in our opinion, our company's opinion, a more of a stick approach than a carrot approach. It's really the only addiction that is truly like that, or I'm sorry, the only distraction that's truly an addiction. All the other distractions in cab are not addictions, but the phone is, right? So that's what's unique about this, is the phone is an addiction, and every vertical you can think of has this problem. Even the gray fleets, right? If you're driving, I mean, I'm not sure, in the audience if anyone's running a gray fleet, but as you're thinking about, your drivers who are driving personal vehicles for work purposes, and you're reimbursing them for mileage or whatever, that's the liability to the company, right? Because you're in reimbursing that mileage. So gray fleets are susceptible, and that's actually just to kind of point that out, that's where traditional telematics can't play a part, right? You're not going to get OBD device or a camera inside a personal vehicle, right? So it really is all across the board. We see it in delivery, last mile delivery, we see it in sales, we see it in field service, government, everywhere.
Yeah, there was a question kind of regarding those who use like a personal phone that I have kind of a little bit later, so we can come back and
Mhm.
highlight that a little bit more. But I think it's bringing that perspective of your phone is an addiction. I mean, these people who built this technology, they're very smart, right? They
Mhm.
want you to consume, and so
Yep.
we're doing it, right? So it's a really unique position on that. Um, with every kind of, we'll call it like big brother type of technology that's implemented on drivers, there's always that fear that, drivers are going to be feeling like they're being controlled, that they're just being completely watched over, like there is someone who is sat at a desk completely just watching video footage the whole time. How do we enforce safe phone policies without feeling like we're being controlling over our drivers?
That's a great question. So our philosophy with the technology we've designed is to do no harm. So number one, we don't ever want to be a friction point for lower productivity, right? So got to stay productive. This is all about living in the practical world, right? We understand that that drivers have to stay productive, right? That we're running a business where this is without the business, you don't have you don't have something to grow, right? And so it's absolutely important that we don't affect that in any way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, um, there's a lot of a downside, right? With if you don't get if you don't try to restrict these people, restrict your drivers from using their phone when they're not supposed to be. So we get in the way of that process when they try to do that, right? Without becoming big brother and like just locking down the phone. That's not our goal, right? Our goal is to get in their way, to remind them that they're doing something wrong, and to force them to learn a safer way, which is really important, right? That forcing people to find a different way. And most people, I just give a perfect example. Most people don't know that like voice commands and Siri and all that, that is so powerful. You can do so much with Siri and the Android equivalent, but people just don't know that, and they don't want to try to know that because they're not forced to know that. So guess what? We force you to know that, and then you become safer, and you also do your job. You stay in touch, but only when you have to, and all that kind of stuff. So we think that creates a more of a safe approach without kind of being too much of a big brother approach.
Yeah. Approaching it in a different way, obviously, it's still that top number one issue for crushes. And so what we're previously been doing historically clearly is not working, or it's not, doing enough. So, bringing forward that, we need to look at this at a different perspective. I think it's a really good thing to kind of bring up to the industry, especially in an industry that has been a little bit hesitant on technology historically. We kind of feel that from our driver file management, our fleet software. A lot of people are still doing things on paper. I mean, they have a huge file cabinet in their office, and they're doing paper, and it's hard to kind of move away from that comfort of paper and what
Exactly.
but there's a better way out there. There's a better way, and we gotta just work to the forward thinking fleets are already moving forward with that, and they're going to be ahead of those that are kind of a little bit stuck with how things have traditionally been done. So, great. Um, how a little bit more just on kind of the fleet rollout and like pushback from drivers. How do you suggest a fleet rolls out a new tool with buy-in instead of pushback? What are some kind of key things that you typically tell those who implement LifeSaver?
Yeah. So first off, our technology works on Android or Apple devices. It can work on a work phone or a work device or a personal device. So it doesn't really matter. Deployment wise, obviously it's easier because you're not going to get the pushback from someone, or you shouldn't get pushback from someone if you're doing it on your company device, right? Because it's your phone or tablet, you own it. You should be able to do whatever you want with it, right? So there shouldn't be much pushback from that perspective, right? I want to talk about personal phones. Obviously, yeah, you're going to have a lot more challenge there. There's, I would say, most of our business is on the company device. Just being totally transparent about that. But at the end of the day, we've had some really good success stories on fleets with personal devices, personal phones. But the short answer, without getting into more detail, and obviously feel free to contact us after the call anytime, is to understand if you have the conviction and the leverage to do this on your personal phones, right? And some companies do, right? And I'm not saying there's no judgment here, but it does take that conviction and leverage. And we have ways to help you with that process of conviction and leverage, or at least the leverage part. And we think we have the best sort of playbook there is to asking people to enroll their personal phone into this program. So we'd love to talk to you more about that. Now, in terms of Emily, back to your question about rollout, I think training the trainer is obviously the way we approach things. So we obviously get buy-in from all the managers first, and that's a really important part of the process. And then we've seen, over the last few years, a lot of success from companies that, it's just all about top down and who's taking it seriously, and whether they have someone who's really dedicated to that role of fleet safety, and is willing to take the lead, in doing that. If you have that person, and it's not just for LifeSaver, it's for all fleet safety, right? That's going to go a long ways to getting this buy-in. And so we've had fleets of 1,000 or more rolling out in just a few weeks, right? And it really is about on the work device. And I'm sorry, I'll just wind this up in a second. But on the work device, it's very easy to deploy our solution at scale in one fell swoop, because there's work devices are typically managed by software, and you can just push our app down on every single device all at once. But the key part that you were referring to is the buy-in, right? You gotta lay that groundwork with not only the managers but also with the employees. And we've done, obviously every company's different. So with the onboarding process, we typically always train the trainers, but sometimes if they ask us, if our customers ask us, we'll do like all hands, driver, or branch by branch driver meetings, so that obviously virtual, to help people answer questions and stuff like that. But we've been doing this for a long time, so we understand that every fleet is different, and getting buy-in is different in each case.
Yeah, and then from, perspective of buy-in from typically, the conversation about buy-in is from drivers, but you could have pushback from your safety managers or your terminal managers as well, because they potentially might see this as, okay, well, now I have another thing that I have to manage and keep track of. And so from that perspective, what we've done, right, between DQM and LifeSaver in particular, is we've integrated where it is one platform to see all that data, and you're still utilizing, the technology that LifeSaver has built, but it's a little bit more digestible because you're in one source of truth. And that, could go for any type of safety, cameras, anything that you're using for safety or behavior tracking of any sort. Having that kind of one place where your managers can land, that's going to be a little bit easier for them to digest, instead of now having to, potentially learn some new, a new database. Most databases are set up pretty similarly, but there may be, some things, but being able to have that connection, I think, is really gonna strengthen the safety package overall, not just having the pushback from the drivers, which, I think that's a whole topic in its own. But since we're on the topic of rollout in particular with managers, just having that integration that we've built has really helped bridge the gap of not trying to remember how to utilize a system, because our drivers are going to be well behaved and not use their phone, so they're never going to have to go into LifeSaver, right, to see the data, because they're just going to be great. But the reality is that they need to be able to see that data in real time. So having a platform that is integrated, depending on what you're using, is super helpful. How I do want to touch on the topic a little bit about drivers, kind of back to that, controlling, overlooking. I think the managers or whoever is really communicating to the drivers that they're rolling this out, that they need to understand why they're doing this, and that it's not, back to there's someone sitting at a desk 24/7 monitoring what they're doing, but it's really for the protection of the driver. And that, hey, if you do have somebody who pulls out in front of you because they see an 80,000-pound vehicle with a big fat insurance, backing them, it happens every day. It happens all the time, and
Every day.
and the camera footage is great. but sometimes the camera footage cuts out or it doesn't see what happened essentially. And so if you can go back to the LifeSaver data, you can see, look, I wasn't on my phone, I wasn't distracted, and it's just another piece of that puzzle that you could protect your drivers against them, dealing with these false claims. Do you have anything else to kind of add on that topic in particular?
Yeah, I mean, in the messaging to the drivers, right? I think that's so important to getting buy-in, as we talked about earlier. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, and this is kind of, layering on top of what we already discussed today, but the phone is an addiction, right? So we all know that everyone needs help. It's not just, fleet drivers. And so, you're a human like everyone else, and everyone needs help. So it's nothing, we're not, there's nothing unique about, this problem. It's across the board. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second thing I would say is, it's a little bit, overused, but it's true. It's like, and you want to, there's no substitute, in my opinion, for the message that, it's all about getting you home, to your family safely after work. So, like those two things, I think are key, key points to make in the messaging to the drivers.
Mm-hmm. So, with that, there are going to be drivers who just have more offenses, right? But long term, we want to be able to use this data and use it for coaching and use it for training and use it for annual reviews and stuff like that. Do you see more of a shift or more people going towards more of like a positive reinforcement type of training structure, or more of corrective action training structure, or a combination of both when they get that data?
Yeah, well, definitely it's a combination of both. So I'll take the easy answer there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'll just say that, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record here, but the phone is an addiction, and so that's one that I don't think, positive reinforcement or coaching or that type of stuff after the fact is gonna improve it. Like even like I said, the video, driver video will improve it, but it won't take it away because of the addiction piece. And so that's where, unfortunately, you have to do, the stronger approach, which is restriction altogether. So
Mhm.
uh, that is, again, I'm going to keep saying it. The phone is the one thing that I think most fleets are realizing now, after looking at the data and understanding the addictive nature of it, that people are like, okay, I need to take that proactive, restrictive approach versus positive reinforcement and corrective action.
Yeah. Um, we are getting close to our time, but we can go over, we just have some good questions here, specifically more on insurance and liability and risks, that fleets are facing today. We've established that it's the number one, cause of accidents and distracted
Mhm.
driving and everything. Can using tools like this and having a safety stack that includes, that next level, how can that really help companies with their risk and in their insurance and,
Mhm.
all of that, everything that encompasses from why we're tracking safety data, why we're tracking risk data, other than we want our people home safe and sound, right? There's that
Sure.
monetary,
Yeah, the ROI to the
incentive with
company. Yep.
insurance, right?
Yep.
So how do you, thoughts on that?
Sure, sure, sure. I've got lots to say, but I'll keep it short.
Hmm.
So yeah, first of all, it all starts with fewer accidents, right? If you have fewer accidents, and you guys all know that, obviously with the uh, the environment of commercial auto insurance, in the last 15 years, it's not been great, and you could have zero accidents or a clean sheet, and you're still going to get a premium, increase because the industry is losing money hand over fist. And so there's that. But at the end of the day, if you control your acts and control your crash frequency, that's the starting point. Then you have the power and the leverage back to you versus giving it to the insurer, right? And then you have the option to do a lot of things, right? you go shop around. Obviously, your broker will help you do that, or you can take it in-house and just self-insure. We've had some amazing examples of that, right? One company, a trucking fleet, with over about close to 800 vehicles. They have they had telematics, or they have telematics, but they used our solution for 3 years with no cameras, zero cameras, and they lowered their crash frequency by 67%, which allowed them to take control, as I said earlier, and go and they did the analysis and they said, you know what, we're going to be self-insured from now on. Now, obviously, they still have their excess layer, and again, 20 firms were competing for their excess layer, but at the end of the day, it gave them the power and control and the leverage to say, I'm going to do this instead. And then guess what? They saved a ton of money from self-insuring that first layer.
Yeah, that's such a amazing statistic. When you shared that with me a couple weeks ago, that's crazy. That is a huge turn. Most sometimes you get like 10, 15, 20%, of a change, but that's crazy. That is a huge, huge difference. So it really speaks to yourself, making sure that you're taking that extra step, right? And making sure that you are utilizing all the data and all the tools that are out there and creating that safety stack that's really going to be beneficial for your fleet. And with your customer in particular, that it was super beneficial for their fleet. They found a solution that was really mattered for what they were trying to adjust for. So I think that kind of covers the majority of our questions. There are a couple more, but I think we touched on them throughout answering. I do, if there are any other questions that kind of anyone has, feel free to throw them in the Q&A chat right now. And while we're waiting for those to come in, Ted, if you just want to share a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you to learn a little bit more, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely, Emily. Once again, my name is Ted Chen. You can reach LifeSaver Mobile is the company name, of course, and you can always reach us through our website. www.lifesavermobile.com is the URL, and we will obviously love to hear from you and explain more about some of the topics we talked about today, including digging deeper into if you have if your main goal is to figure out a strategy for mitigating personal phone usage behind the wheel. We have, I think, one of the best approaches to help fleets with that, with finding leverage to do that, right? And as I mentioned earlier, that company that saved all that money and self-insurance and all that, they actually did that on personal phones. So we've had some really good success there. We think we have the right playbook, if you will, for how to go about doing it. Whether or not each case is different, so whether or not you have the ability to get there is something we'll have to explore further with you guys individually. But please feel free to reach out at www.lifesavermobile.com. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll put all of Ted's information in our wrap-up email as well, so you guys can very easily get in touch with them. But it doesn't look like we have any more questions rolling in. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ted, for being here today and speaking on this topic with me. I think it was a good topic to kick off 2026 goals of safety and compliance. Stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.